Hey, welcome to the Autumn Carnelian Peyote-Stitch class. In this class, I want to show you guys a great refresher, or for new people, a great intro to even count peyote. So this is a super easy design. It only has 4 beads per row, works up super fast, and it's adaptable to the colors in both the Autumn Carnelian mix and other seed bead palettes you might want to try it with as well. It's a really cool pattern that has worked with a series of colors that make it look like little, you can look at it like little flowers, but it could also be little leaves. And that's kind of what the feeling I was trying to evoke with the colors and with the stitch up. So both of the colorways that you see here are available in a pattern PDF, and there will be links in the description where you can find those. In this video, I'm going to walk you through how to read them, how to start the pattern, how to work the pattern, and how to put on the finding at the end. I'm also going to show you how to add thread and then talk a little bit about how to extend out the pattern. So let's get started and dive into the Peyote-Stitch workshop. I wanted to add a quick chat about the length of the bracelet. So the finished length of this design, you might want to think of it more like 6 1/4, because this kind of a design, even though it wears tight to the skin, these are overlapping. So it's more like 6 1/4 for that reason, because when you're wearing it, these are on top of each other. So you want to measure it from here to like the end of the beadwork, right? Or just where the clasp starts. So if you do that, you're getting 6 1/4. So if you would like to make this bracelet longer or shorter, the secret sauce to that is right here in both the word chart, and you can just notate this on your chart if you want. But that's a repeat, and it gives you 0.5 inches. So if you get to the end, for example, when you get to row 94, if you would like to add another 1/2 inch at that point, before you complete rows 95 through 98, you can insert repeats of these rows right here, which are rows 5 through 13. So from here, you just want to repeat these, which is basically this section right here. And that'll give you 1/2 inch every time you repeat it. When you're ready to finish, you switch back to these last rows after you've ended with this 2A, 1C, 1A. And that's how you extend the pattern. To make these bracelets, the supplies that you need are here on my mat. I'm using 1G thread in the color beige. I'm using one of the magnetic clasps from TierraCast that has 2 size 8 seed beads built in. I'm using the Autumn Carnelian seed bead mix. I'm going to be using a beading needle, size 10 or size 11, even size 12 will work, but you can probably use any beading needle you've got. And then last but not least, I have next to this a really pretty design that is a good accent for this beautiful bracelet. And it was made with gemstones that I will link in the video description. It's just a very beautiful piece to wear side by side with it. And I just spaced those with some seed beads, and I put a lobster claw and a chain on the end. And it was that easy. It's on soft flex beading wire. And so it's just a really nice accent for this design. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through how this bracelet was made. I'm going to show you how to put the clasp on at the end. So to get started, we're going to just start with an even count peyote stitch. And I'm going to work this in a slightly different colorway. So there are 2 colorways available in the same pattern. So the instructions will be identical no matter which colorway you choose. Since I've already got a beautiful purple one, I'm going to go ahead and make one of my other dream palette, which is one where the main color is actually the topaz, and then it brings in the purple as the accent. So kind of just a little bit different from what's going on here, but the flowers are going to stay that bright orange, and I even kept the brick red next to it and the bronze in the center, which is the hex bead that is in this mix. And so to get started, what you want to do is go ahead and pour out your mix. And what I usually do to keep track of what colors A, B, C, D, E, and F is I will just pick a bead out of the tube and lay it in an order on the mat, so that it's kind of like just a visual reference for me for which bead is color A and B and C and so on. So let's get that set up, and then I'll show you how to get started. And so what you see here is my pile of seed beads that I'm going to be choosing from. And then just right here at the top, I've made myself a little legend that shows me color A, B, C, D, E, and F. And for thread length, I just recommend cutting a comfortable length. It could be any length that works for you. I usually just pull a wingspan, so holding one side in my hand and the spool in the other, I'll just bring my arms all the way out in a wing that usually for me is about 65 to a little over 65 inches, and that seems to be a comfortable working length for my hand. And most people probably say it's about close to that. And so just start with that, and we're going to add thread, and I'll show you how to do that as we get going. And so I'm just threading my beading needle and get that on there. There we go. And so just fold over a small amount of it, maybe like, say that much, right? Enough to make it a comfortable length. And then we're going to get started with working the first rows of the pattern for a tail. So when you add your first beads, leave a tail that's about 15 inches. We're going to need good tail thread. And you can always weave in if you want, but we're going to want to have enough tail to sew on our ending. And in some cases, depending on the fit, when it comes to Peyote-Stitch, sometimes you want to add a row to make the clasp fit symmetrically with the other side. I'll show you that when we get there too. If you are someone who likes to follow the word chart, you can get a Post-it note and you can string your first rows 1 and 2 like that, just by stringing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 beads, all color A. Or if you're like me and you're a word chart person, I like to work from the word chart and I'll just follow along, and I'll use a ruler or a Post-it note to keep my place. I tried to make this pattern nice and beginner friendly and easy to get started. And so what you'll enjoy seeing is the first rows of the pattern all the way through row 4 are all worked with just color A. So you don't have to worry about that first row spinning on you or anything like that. So just go ahead and string 8 color A, which is the clear topaz. And again, bring that down until you have about 15 inches of a tail left on your thread. And then you'll want to pick up another color A bead. And what you'll want to do is skip the last bead you strung and then go through the bead right after it. And you're heading back towards your tail thread when you do this. So what happens when you pull this through is the 2 beads will sit side by side. And sometimes if you just kind of tighten by pulling the tail side and working sides apart, and don't be afraid to pull pretty tight and help it a little bit if needed. But the goal is to get these 2 beads to sit like that. So let me show you a little closer. See, they pop in place just like that. And so we're going to repeat that to the end. So we're going to add a total of 4 beads. And this whole pattern is only 4 beads per row. So it's actually pretty quick. So next we're going to skip a bead and go through the next bead. And again, I'm going to pull the threads apart to tighten it up. You can just do this after every add if you'd like. Sometimes they loosen again on you. We can fix that all before we do the next row. So just like that. One more time, color A, or sorry, 2 more to go. There's another one. And again, you want to skip the next bead and go through the one right after it. So just like that. And now it's all starting to kind of hold its shape and stay in place much nicer. Sorry, my thread got tangled there for a second. And it needs to go down a little further on my needle after that. So now we have 1 more to pick up. It's 1 more color A. And we're going to skip the next A and go through the one that is right after that. And that's the last one for row 3. And I'll show you the pattern here really quick. So you should have a little starter, Peyote-Stitch starter, that looks like that. And what you just did on the word chart is you strung 8A and then you added 4A. So you've completed rows 1, 2, and 3. So let's do row 4 really quick. Row 4 starts with another A, nice and easy. And try to keep this tight. Often what I do is I wrap the tail thread around my hand, and then I hold the work, and I actually kind of pinch the beads, see, like that. I've got the new bead on my needle, and then when I bring the first bead through this first up bead, see how it kind of loosens on you? If you want to keep that nice and tight, you can just pull these apart, pinch it in your hand, and then while you're pulling your needle through that bead until it gets all the way down, just hold everything tightly. And it should pop right into place, just like that. And then after you add this row, row 4, everything stays where you put it. It's much easier. So here's the next one. And you're just skipping, you're doing the same thing we did in the row 3, where you're skipping a bead and going through the next one. But it's just much easier to see it now because it's the up bead. It's the one that's, looks like there's an exact spot to put that bead. So we pick up another one. Just go right through here. And one more. And there you go. And that's all there is to it. This entire pattern has worked just like that. Let's do another row together. I'm going to show you the pattern again. We're going to start adding other colors. So we just finished row 4. That's 4A. And now we need to do 2A, a C, and an A. So here's another A. Just digging around here for those. Here is the second A. And then it wants a color C. So I'm going to look up here at my legend, A, B, C. So I know C is a cream colored bead. I'll grab one of those. And now I'm going to go with color A one more time. All right. And this is how you finish the next row. So that is basically how you do the whole pattern. So we just finished row 5. And what we're going to do for the rest is the same thing. Just going to work each row individually, adding the colors indicated in the order indicated. And eventually you will run out of thread before reaching the end of the pattern. So at that spot, tune into my next section of this video, and I'll show you adding thread on a Peyote-Stitch design. All right, so here's how to take care of adding thread when you run short. So my thread is getting pretty short here, and what I want to do is add a new strand. And so I'm going to get another spool of thread, another wingspan of thread, sorry, from my spool, and go ahead and weave that in. So here's one wingspan. Okay. And I'm going to put another needle on this one, or actually I'll just borrow this one right here. It's right there. And then all I usually do for weaving in is I just kind of follow my thread path through a few beads and then aim to exit from the spot where my thread is currently exiting so that I can follow along with my pattern without losing my place. So just bring your needle into the work somewhere, anywhere, and a few rows back from where you'd like to start sewing. And then for the tail, okay, so there's going to be a little tail here for a minute. Kind of just hold it in your hand. So see how I'm just kind of hanging on to it? Because it's going to move a lot on you as you do these steps of kind of traveling around for a second. So just keep bringing the needle through a few beads. And at first this tail will be really loose. So this one right here, for the new one we're adding, see how easily it's moving? Our goal is to stitch around in the beads until this doesn't move anymore. And let me just put the old working thread out of the way really quick. So basically what I'm going to do is just keep going through a few beads. You can sometimes get through 2 at a time, save you a little effort there. I still have my thumb on the tail so I don't pull it through accidentally, which has happened to me before after trying to weave in. So keep going. And oh, look at that. Hey, I got through 3. So here's a turn. I got to the edge of the row and now I'm just bringing the thread back through the next bead right here, see? And let's do a little test. Let's see if the tail moves. I can still move it, but I have to try really hard. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and make a turn this way. So see, I'm exiting out of that bead. And now I'm going to just go through this bead. Let's see if I can get through all three. Why not? Well, maybe I want to do one more turn just to make sure. So there's that one, that one. And now I'm just making one more turn. So see, I'm exiting up out of that bead. I'm going to go down through the adjacent. And then I'm going to head up through this red bead. And the existing thread is right here. The old working thread, sorry. And tighten that all up. Make sure I don't catch there. And I'm pretty confident at this point that that's really woven in. But you can always do a test by holding the new thread and just kind of giving it a tug. And as long as this tail doesn't move, then you've got it. So you can either use your thread burner to remove this little tail here, or you can trim it with scissors. I'll show you a scissors way. You just push down with your scissors on the work, see, while pulling up with the new strand. Just cut with that tension going. And sometimes, most of the time, that will put your thread right inside the bead and you won't see it anymore. All right, so from here, ignore your old working thread. And it really helps if you just take the old working thread and just kind of hold the piece with that old working thread toward the back, just out of your way, right? And then what you want to do is create new rows. So I'm going to create 4 new rows, maybe 5, just 4 or 5 new rows. And then I'll put a needle on this old working thread and weave it up into the new rows that I created and then trim it. I do that just so that I don't have a lot of bulk happening. If I was to weave this in now back here, there'd be a lot of extra threads crossing each other and it would make this part stiffer and it wouldn't be as flowy as the other parts. So it's a, you know, it's kind of a nice to have. It's not required, but it's just like what I like to do. And so I'm going to go ahead and make a few more rows and then weave up my old thread into those new rows. That's all there is to it. That's how you add thread. And of course, if anyone's curious what a wingspan got me as far as the pattern, I made it all the way to the end of page 1. Or in this case, it's page 2, but the first page of the word chart. So I'm on row 45 before I had to add any thread. So here it is, the full pattern completed all the way through row 98. And I made it without having to add thread again, which was pretty good. And so I'm going to show you how to put on the clasp now. So I'm going to start with the tail side. So I went ahead and put a needle on the tail thread that we left at the very beginning. And I'm going to attach the clasp right about there. So this is an even count design, so it doesn't have a midpoint. And the clasp that we have is designed for an odd count piece. Any of these symmetrical stitch-ins that you see, they're going to assume symmetry, and an even count peyote design doesn't have that. You have to do odd count to get a center. So, but I found a way around that. And so what I did was I added an extra row on one side so that the clasp can at least be aligned in the same way. But what you'll notice if you look close at this one is that I do have one side of my bracelet that is 1 bead wider than the finding. It's really hard to perceive. It's not a dramatic thing. Maybe you wouldn't have even noticed if I didn't point it out, but notice that one side is, you know, flush with the beadwork and the other is kind of inset by about a bead. So I made it so that that was the same for both sides of my clasp, and I'll show you how to get started with that. So the best and easiest way to do it is to take and look at your clasp and start with your tail side and go ahead and just stitch it in. I'm going to preserve this indent here. So rather than adding another bead and then going through the clasp, what I'm going to do is I'm going to weave back through the work. So you'll want to take your needle and go ahead through the bead that's one back in the row you're exiting. Bring that through. And then go to the 3rd bead in that next column in. And sorry, these are, running these weaves should be called columns. I think I misspoke earlier. Okay, then I'm going to bring this down through the 2nd bead in that column. Now I'm going to head up through that edge bead. I'm not sure if you guys can hear, but it is pouring rain outside of my window right now. It just started, so it's perfect for this autumn bracelet. So it's a little ambiance with our stitching today. So now my thread's exiting from that bead right there. It's exactly where we want to go. So we can bring on the finding. So I'm going to bring my needle through the finding. And what it'll do is it'll settle right inside of that first little spot right there perfectly. And let's go ahead and stitch through the next bead in the row, just like that. And then I'm going to go through the next 2 beads in the row. And keep in mind, we're actually working into 2 rows there. So I'm going from this bead right here to this one, and then I'm going to just go ahead and in one swoop get through that one as well. Everything's going to be pretty loose on you, especially with this first pass. So just keep everything aligned as best you can. I'm going to pull that through. Okay, so now I'm ready to go through the finding again. See where we're connected here? Oops, sorry about that. Just like that. So let's go through the finding. And now through the last bead here in the edge of the work. So that is the way that you'd like to connect this side. Now it's still pretty loose because we only did 1 pass. So what I recommend doing is another 2 passes through the beads and the finding. And the way to do that is to just weave around. So from this edge, I'll show you just getting started on this side since you have to do a little turn. What I usually do is it's the same thing we did when we were getting started on the other side. You see I'm heading through the second column there and using it as a way to turn. And then from here, if you want, you can just come right up through the finding. Or you can go through this bead, make a turn, come through this bead, and then go through. Either way, doesn't matter. So there's that way. Weave through. Get through this bead right here. And again, we're going to reinforce the connection right here. So do that a couple more times. In this case, you can either go through this bead, or if you want, you can even just turn this way. And you can head through the next bead here, the next one here, and then that puts you here. So just as long as you're sticking with the Peyote-Stitch configuration, and you pretty much got it. So once you've got your finding attached on one side and you did a bunch of reinforcing and weaving in, it's time to attach it to the other side. And so what I usually do is the first thing I'll do is I'll take the bracelet and I'll leave the, the second side clasped to it. That gives you the alignment so you don't sew it in backwards by accident. But then notice if I was to try to connect it now, I'd be off a little bit. So I would have my, and you know what, it's not the end of the world if you have it like this. You can go ahead and just go straight and attach it now. But if you want it to be aligned, so meaning these to be going in the same width, as opposed to being just a little off by like that, you can add one more row and just add another row of A beads. So that's what I'm going to do here, is I'm just going to pick up 4A one at a time. Here's one. And a little low on A, but I'll find them. I know they're here. And here's number 2, 3, and here's number 4. So that puts our finding in the position we want when we stitch it in. So it'll be just like that. And they'll be lined up, and there'll also be that same little indent. Let me show you on the finished one. So, oops, that clasped backwards there. All right. So in this case, see when you bring it together, you get the indent on the same side. So if you like that, that's how I did it. There we go, all finished. I did a bunch of weaving in, and I made it super tight, and so there's one side of my design. Here's the other side. You can see both of them kind of next to each other there. And they look really nice. And then the fun part, you get to try it on. Oops. Here we go. So super, super nice. I love it. I hope you enjoyed this class, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. You can reach me through my Instagram at Danielle Wickes Jewelry. You can always send an email to info@samsbeadshop, and they'll get the question to me as well. So I hope you've loved this bracelet and that you make one, and be sure to post in Gem Chat when you do, because I'd love to see it. Especially if you make it in another like version or colors, that would be really cool to see as well. But I just want to wish you happy beading and enjoy wearing your bracelets. And also, I just wanted to also remind you that I have that other little bracelet that I made. And it is really easy. Like I said in the beginning, it's just a simple stringing with some crimp. But look how cool it looks as a stacker bracelet. I mean, it's like, yeah, that's really awesome. So definitely got to make one of those, and you'll have your set complete. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and a thumbs up, and I will see you in the next one.